Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now today we're going to take a look at restoring this vintage Mego Robin Hood and his Merry Men Friar Tuck figure that I've recently received. As you can see, he's in a few pieces, but we do have all the parts for his body. He just needs reconstructing, and I need to sort out finding the outfit for him and making a few little bits and bobs. So let's get straight on with this restoration. So as you can see, this poor little Friar Tuck is in quite a few pieces at the moment, and that's because the rubber bands inside him had perished, and so he had fallen apart. So really the first thing we've got to do is put him back together. Now this is a Type 2 Mego Friar Tuck, and you can tell this because there are no metal rivets in his legs. All the hinges and stuff are done with little plastic bits. And because this is a sort of fat body figure, he only has one body part, which is the sort of the chest and pelvis all as one piece. If you look at other Mego dolls, you can see that they have a separate pelvis section, so it makes him fairly easy to put back together. Now obviously if you don't have these original rubber bands, you're going to need to replace them, and really the easiest thing to use is some little O-rings. You can see here I have an O-ring, and all you've got to do is find an O-ring that when you squeeze it flat like that, matches about the same sort of length as the original rubber band. So you can see that one matches quite perfectly. Now these O-rings, if I put this on my little measuring mat there, you can see it's actually 2 centimeters. So about 2 centimeters is the size of the O-ring that you would need. I'm going to use these original bands just because I have them, but the O-ring works perfectly well. Putting these figures back together is a fairly straightforward job. You just have to remember that the two limbs are joined across the body. So if you've got a right arm like this, it needs to attach to the left leg, and then the left arm attaches to the right leg. Now to put the leg back on, you'll need these two little elements here, which is the little plastic hook that goes into the thigh hole, and this tiny little C-shaped piece of metal. If you don't have this piece of metal, then you can just make something similar out of a paperclip, and that will work just as well. Now the threading of everything through the leg can be a bit tricky. You can try and push this piece through and then hook the little rubber band on, but I've always found that quite awkward. So the way I do it is I already hook the rubber onto the little metal hook like this, and then try and thread this through the leg. Now if you use something like a crochet hook, that does make this easier. So you can push the crochet hook through, hook on to the piece of rubber, and then pull this through the hole. Again, even this is still quite tricky, but I found this an easier way of doing it than the other way. So there you go, I've now pushed the rubber through, and then we can pull that last bit through like so, and you can see that the band is now on the leg and hooked through the hole of the thigh, and that makes it a lot easier. Now we can again use the crochet hook, because what we're going to do, we can thread this through the body. So if I put the crochet hook through his right shoulder and then hook onto the rubber band there, and then we can pull that all the way through his body and up and out of the shoulder hole like this. So now that we've got that through the body, we've got to hook the shoulder piece on. So you grab the other arm, you can see there's a little metal hook there, and that needs to be hooked through the rubber band like so, and then we can remove the crochet hook, and the arm is back in place, and that's one leg and one arm in place. Now these legs are always a little bit floppy. I've never understood why they constructed the arms and legs like this, because it's really not a great way of doing it, and this is the correct band for this figure, so it's not the greatest way of doing it, but that is how it's supposed to be done. This is just the same process in reverse. So again, I'm going to hook the band onto the metal hook and the sort of peg that is the hip joint. And again, this needs to be threaded through the, this is his right leg now, so we can just pull the rubber band through the thigh hole like so. And that's in place. And then I can then thread this through the body just using the crochet hook. And we'll take this hook and we can now hook this in place like so, and again take the crochet hook out. Slot his arm back in, and there we have it. That's both arms and legs reattached to this Friar Tuck. Now, as far as finding clothes for this Friar Tuck, I was unable to find any originals online. So for the moment, I've bought some reproduction ones from Classic TV Toys website. The quality of them is okay. They're not the greatest things in the world, but they'll do for the moment. And I have to say that when I bought these, the postage that they charge is a little bit excessive. And I was also stung for import duty. So what should have been a fairly cheap purchase actually ended up costing me quite a lot of money. So I would suggest if you're in the UK and doing restorations, be wary of buying stuff from Classic TV Toys, because it can cost you an awful lot of money. But I've got them here, and let's get them on the figure and see what he looks like. So this is a reproduction sort of cape and gown type thing for him. Again, it's a fairly good sort of reproduction, really. The quality of it is not perfect, but I think it will do the job. And really, this is a fairly simple thing. It's also almost the sort of thing that you could make yourself, but I think in this instance this will do. So we've got that fits on the figure. Actually doesn't look too bad. I bought a pair of sandals, as you can see here, which are the sort of little sandals. I'm not quite sure which way round these go. See which one fits. Yeah, they don't actually seem to fit particularly well, but again, they will do the job for now. So let's sit those on there. So now he's got some sandals, which is a good start. And then I bought a wine jug as well, which is supposed to go on a belt around his waist. Now we don't have the belt, so let's get making that. Now the belt should be a little bit of sort of black thread, or it's sort of more string than thread, I suppose, and it needs to look quite ropey. So I've had a look in Mrs. Toy-Polloi's sort of fabric and wool pot, and I found this wool, which looks quite nice. As you can see, it's got quite a sort of ropey texture to it, so I'm going to use some of that. Now we need enough that's going to wrap around his body once and leave us enough that we can tie a nice sort of bow with it. So don't actually need a huge amount of this stuff, so I'm just going to say about that, which is about 25 centimetres of it, so we'll cut some of that off. Now the problem we have is we've got to thread this through the wine jug, and the wine jug has a very small hole, as you can see there, and it's fairly rough. So the way we're going to do that is actually using just some beading wire. Now this is very thin wire. You can get this at most sort of well, just most shops actually. In fact, I've bought it, I can't remember, I bought this at a sort of pound shop. It wasn't very expensive. And I'm going to make a U shape, and I'm going to thread the bit of wool through that U shape like that, and then we can just push these two ends of the wire through the hole in the wine jug like so, and pull the wool through the hole like that, and we can get rid of the bit of wire. And the wine jug is now in place. Now I want to actually tie the ends of these bits of wool just so that it looks a little bit, I don't know, I think it will look a little bit better if it's tied at the ends. So quick knot at the end of that one. Should also keep the wine jug in place, and we'll do the same on this end. Like so, and we can now put this around Friar Tuck's waist and get it all tied in place, and it should make the gown look a bit better as well. So I'm just going to tie this on, and I think he will look better if there's a little bow. So I'm just going to carefully tie a small bow. Like that. I think that looks quite good. And there we have his wine jug now held nicely around his waist. Now, just while filming this segment, I've been trying to get his shoes on, and actually this one has already broken. So as I say, the stuff that you buy from Classic TV Toys is fairly poor quality, so you do have to be a bit careful with it. I'm going to just try and glue that with a bit of super glue, but really something like that shouldn't break straight away, and this one has. So yeah, be warned that the stuff they sell is pretty cheap and cheerful. Now the last thing this Friar Tuck needs before he's finished is a staff or a stick. He should have a stick that's about 7 inches long that he holds in his hand. Now you can buy reproductions of these, but I thought it was a bit silly to buy something that is essentially a brown stick. So I've had a quick sort of think and a quick rummage, and recently I've just bought myself some new paintbrushes, and I chucked the old paintbrushes in the bin. But actually one of these old paintbrushes is a perfect replacement for the stick. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this down to 7 inches long and then paint it. We'll shape the ends a bit and paint it a brown colour, and that should work perfectly. The staff is actually 7 inches long exactly, so that's 17.5 centimetres. Now this paintbrush is slightly tapered at one end, so what we're going to do is actually try and use the thicker end of it so it doesn't look so noticeably tapered. So I'm going to just cut off the actual brush head. You can do this quite roughly because we're actually going to shape all of this, so I'm just going to snap that off. And then I can measure on this cutting mat 17.5 centimetres, which is just about there, and we can cut off the very end of this paintbrush. Again, just snap that off. As you can see, that's now removed most of the taper, so all we've got to do now is to shape the ends. I have here a piece of sandpaper, and really it's just going to be a case of using the sandpaper to gently shape these ends into a sort of nice curved shape, because it really needs to be just a sort of rounded ball at each end. You can see that's starting to shape already. It doesn't take very long to do. Okay, you can see that's actually looking all right already. We'll do the same with this end as well, which is the other end that I've cut. Now that I've shaped both ends, we need to get the rest of this ready for painting. Because this is a paintbrush, it's been lightly varnished, so I'm just going to use some very fine sandpaper here just to rough up the varnish all around the paintbrush so that we can then paint it and the paint will stick nice and firmly. For painting this, I'm just going to use some standard Humbrol acrylic paints. I'm using RC402, which is a brown. Don't even need to mix this because this should be about the right colour. It's a fairly sort of woody looking brown. I'm just going to give this a quick coat of that, and then once that's dried I will give it a quick coat of a clear spray lacquer just to make sure that it's extra sort of firmly held in place. This may need a couple of coats of this Humbrol acrylic, because you might see a bit of the wood through it, but actually that might look quite nice because that makes it look a little bit more like a wooden stick, which is what it should be. But if you want to make it look more original, I would say it needs to be a flat shade of brown, so 2 coats of this acrylic should cover it nicely. And after a top coat of lacquer, here's the stick. As you can see, it actually looks quite nice. It's got quite a nice finish to it. I did try to make another one out of a cocktail stirrer, but as you can see, it's a bit too short. The plastic for these cocktail stirrers is only about 160 centimetres long. You can see this is what it looked like originally, but it gives you quite a nice shape because you can file down the end and make it more of a sort of finished top to the stick, but it is a little on the short side. So I think I'm going to stick with the wood from the brush because that does look better. So let's put this with Friar Tuck and we can look at the finished figure. And here he is, the finished figure with everything in place. As you can see, the little stick works pretty well. It's the same sort of colour, matches the little drinks pouch thing that he's got there and his shoes. So overall, I'm really pleased with how that's gone. Obviously, the reproduction bits aren't great. I'm pretty disappointed with how the shoes are made because they did break so easily. And the rest of it it's okay, but it's not perfect. So I would really like to try and track down some original versions of the clothes and the shoes to replace over time. But for the moment, this will do. It's better than having a figure in pieces in a box. I'd rather have it on display, even if the stuff isn't perfect. So if you can help me find some of those pieces, then do get in touch, because I'd be happy to trade or swap some toy-polloi bits for them, because it's always nicer to have an original figure if I possibly can. So if you've enjoyed this video and would like to help support toy-polloi, then please check out my Patreon page, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos.